So in Module 4, we're going to continue talking about symptoms of mood disorders. We talked about the emotional and cognitive kind of symptoms in Module 3. And so now we're going to look at somatic. In this case, somatic are physical manifestations of psychological issues, and then behavioral symptoms, along with other things that are kind of comorbid frequently with various types of mood disorders. So first, let's talk about somatic symptoms. In regards to depression, what you see are things like the fatigue, lethargy, aches and pains. All of those are going to be magnified over your typical state of being. You can see the changes in appetite a lot of times that creep in, and sleep patterns in particular. Really having trouble falling asleep can be a problem that oftentimes comes together. And of course, in a manic episode, which we discussed below, you can see people having a drastically reduced need for sleep as they kind of go through the mania. You can see the weight loss and disturbed sleep, the weight loss from the not eating typically. You also have anhedonia. Now, anhedonia sounds like a very exotic kind of symptom, but really it's just a short way of trying to describe the inability to experience pleasure in especially activities that were previously found pleasurable. So once again, my video game example would be a good one here, and that's anhedonia. So if you hear anhedonia, it's a key feature when we talk about depression. There is a loss of sexual desire. So people who are depressed are usually not seeking out sexual involvements. And then what you then see in addition to that is, frequent kind of headaches, muscular aches, pains that we talked about earlier. Now with mania, what we see here is the reduced need for sleep, which I talked about, and then a lot more energy. So it's on really is a flip side of the coin in regards to depression and mania. And of course, you can't have both at the same time. So that's why they go back and forth among some types of mood disorders. Obviously, not everybody has that type of issue. Okay, so that's somatic symptoms. Now, when we talk about behavioral symptoms, with depression is something that you call psychomotor retardation. Anytime you hear retardation, this is not necessarily reflecting on somebody's intellect. It just means a slowing down of something. And so you can have psychomotor retardation, which means a lack of kind of motor responses. People seem to be very slow moving when they're experiencing this. On the opposite side is mania, where gregarious means just very outgoing, full of life, high energy kind of activity levels, feeling very impulsive. And as opposed to a lack of sexual appetite, they may have a heightened sense of that because they just feel so energized, and they may engage in more provocative behavior, trying to get a rise out of others, really just wanting others to feed into the energy that they are feeling. Which can lead into some of these kind of more impulsive situations. And you can imagine being around somebody who is kind of in this manic episode, and it's kind of hard dealing with it. It's a bit much, we'll put it that way. So as far as other problems, in addition to those symptoms that we see with mood disorders, you do have high levels of comorbidity. And I already talked about one, and that is anxiety. So 60% of depressed people also have anxiety issues. And whether the anxiety or depression comes first, usually I find that the anxiety tends to come first, and then people become depressed because the anxiety isolates them or they have other issues. Alcoholism, there's a 40% overlap between major depressive episodes and alcoholism. Somewhere along there. So now alcoholism, as far as a substance, is what we call a depressant, and it dampens the responsiveness of symptoms. So, or your systems, your physical symptoms. So you can imagine why that may tie in with overall depression at some point. But that's not it, of course. We have eating disorders. A lot of times we'll also go in with depression, alcoholism, talked about anxiety disorders, and that these are all very common among first-degree relatives of depressed people. So if you're depressed, you probably also have in your family. Somebody maybe has eating disorders or may have alcoholism or may have anxiety. So this is hinting at some of the genetic components that can come along with the depression sort of episodes. Okay. All right, so that is the other symptoms, somatic and behavioral symptoms, in addition to the emotional cognitive symptoms that all tie up into our overall symptomology for mood disorders. And then you saw the types of comorbidity that we frequently see in addition to depression. So in Module 5, we're going to be getting into the specific DSM types of depressive disorders and mood disorders. So stay tuned for Module 5.